Hello, my name is Nick Vick.
And I'm Azero Alcala.
And you are listening to the Confidently Uncertain Podcast.
Welcome.
Hello, and welcome to our show. This is episode 13, I believe, and we got something a little bit different going on this time around. So you have me, Nick Vick, and Azero Alcala, and our special guest, Ian Francis-Salles. We're going to add more claps to that.
Yeah, we're gonna. Standing ovation. We're standing.
Yeah. Ian, just give him a little bit of an introduction here. Ian, he's been a friend of ours for years, and he is someone who does the sound mixing for all our episodes. So being a great friend of ours and being someone who's been behind the scenes of the show, it's a big moment for us to finally have him here. So I'm going to stop talking. And Ian, why don't you start introducing yourself?
Hi, I'm Ian.
Wow, what enthusiasm!
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Ian.
I didn't know I was your parent. And I was like, Ian, say hi to the people.
Parent-teacher conference. You can't see the layout of the room, but I'm right next to Ian as if I'm the parent, and Nick is like the teacher.
Can you explain why he won't take off the damn headphones in class?
Ian, tell him.
I'm Ian, and enthusiasm on command is not really something I'm particularly good at. I'm very happy to be here. Don't let my voice throw you off otherwise.
Yeah, he's like you dress like a goth, and now it's like, I've seen you smile before, but yours it's a smallest smirk right now, pure excitement. Yeah. That is what I feel right now.
He's really immersed in his background type production work that he does with us, so he doesn't really stand out.
So Ian, why don't you? We already said you do a sound mixing for our show, but why don't you say what else you do? I mean, you're a big guy, and I don't know. It's like you've been doing sound since I've known you, and I mean music, and just for some reason knowing the shit when it comes to mixing levels. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background?
So, at some point or another, I've been a musician to some effect since I was 11. I started playing the drums, and by the time I was 13, I decided that I want to learn how to play more than drums. I want to be able to write melodies. I want to be able to... So I taught myself started teaching myself how to play keyboard, and then eventually I moved on to bass and guitar over the next couple of years. And at the same time, I was like, I want to record. My dad had a little recording device, so I started recording to some effect when I was 13. Absolute trash. I still actually have the recordings, and it's amazing to hear them.
I'm a big fan of them, too, I should say.
So, then I started to work with digital audio workstations when I was 14. That's the standard program for writing music, recording, mixing, mastering. And just, I've done it since. I originally was doing more so music that was on the rock or metal end. Then I developed an interest in electronic and hip hop. And, so musically, I focus more so on those kinds of genres now. And then along the way, it's just learning different mixing techniques, delving into the more technical aspects of music theory, of engineering, of mixing. And what you see now is just what, for the most of my life, has been it's been an interest, a hobby. Just all the knowledge that I've acquired from there, applying it. I'm 25 now, so I've been working with music to some capacity for 14 years. And
I want to quickly mention, during all this time, you were still in school, you're still having full-time jobs and all that. So you're kind of in a similar situation as us, right?
Yeah.
Just doing all that stuff.
Yeah, and now, so just to kind of bring it up to speed, right now I graduated last year from UC Berkeley, the degree in philosophy, and I just been working since. Right now I'm working full-time as a pool service technician, which, really good application of the degree right there. So,
what is water?
Every time he cleans the pool, he's all like, I went to Berkeley. And the guy, the customer's like, yeah.
Really? You're not cleaning like you're from Berkeley?
But, But I mean, it's a good job. It's stable. And that's what I'm doing for now. And it pays decently. And then of course when I'm home, I'm working on stuff related to sound. And that's kind of what I say is, instead of saying, oh, like, I work on music, it's like, yeah, that's true, but it's like I just like sound in general. Like, so right now I record this now I'm recording the podcast, but
yeah, we gave him a promotion, everybody.
yeah, but I'm doing the post production for the podcast, doing all the mixing, and hopefully you'll notice that there's been this trend of things kind of have sounded better as time went on, because I've never really applied my skills in this way. And then the other thing I'm doing is, and I know that you've mentioned this on the show, Nick, but is that I'm working on the sound for Hyde.
Yes.
I'm doing the mixing and the score.
Mm-hmm. That's something that's been very fun, to be honest. You mentioned, like, I should say, like, there's this reason I do like to work with you when it comes to sound, and that's because you gave me the appreciation for sound way ahead when a school had to tell me. Way ahead of me messing up. Like because of you, when I started filming, sound was always like this priority in my head of like, I can't just, I don't know how else to put it. It's like, I can't just put shitty sound on this. I can't just forget about the sounds. Like, I need to put just as much work. Even sometimes I put in more work on the sound than the film itself. And I'm bringing this up because, I fucking love what you have done with Hyde so far, and I can't wait for everyone to see it. And right before recording this, I even mentioned, like, this film became a new film once you started mixing the sounds. It's a complete visual experience, but it's also like, you gotta really listen. Like, I want to play with sounds in it. So it's like, yeah, you're fucking good at it.
Yeah. So one of the things that's interesting, I remember reading when I was doing research about, okay, how am I supposed to do sound for film? Because it is a different beast than music. There are a lot of the skills that you get from mixing music that apply to film. But I recall distinctly this one article, can't remember where I read it, because just, you Google stuff and you just keep reading and doing it on your phone.
Wow, that's credible.
It is credible. I got sources. I got sources, man. But no.
Trust me, I know people.
I know people, all right? All right, there's an insider, can't name him. No. But the thing is sometimes somebody will just make a good point, and the point stands on its own. And one of the points I heard was that I read was, well, you could have visually a pristine film. You could have a film that visually looked like you spent millions on the budget. But if your sound is bad, the film's going to be shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right?
Definitely.
Like, you could have visuals that maybe aren't the greatest, but if you have good sound, you can still get immersed in it. That there's this sort of sound acts as this sort of, it can be like the weakest link or the strongest link of your film. So having your sound being good, it's crucial to a good film. You can't escape it. And I've seen it where I've seen videos like on YouTube where somebody will have great visuals, like you can tell they're using a really nice camera, but then their audio is not EQ'd, it's not compressed, there's a bunch of noise in the background, and it looks amateurish no matter how good visually it actually looks. It's still the piece as a whole looks amateurish.
Yeah.
I think the common with like YouTube trends and YouTube type standards is more of like the visually appealing type stuff, because like even when you started out, you got like just a simple mic, like a Rode mic that worked out pretty much most of the time. But I guess back then there wasn't that much of a emphasis on the sound, and like I'm pretty sure once you look back at it, you're like, oh wow, like in comparison to now, like.
Well, I mean, like comparing it to Hyde, yeah, but actually even back then with But Wait There's More, like I knew sound was pretty crucial into it. Like so one thing I would say is like, and I see this what I would consider a mistake done a lot, is that you record on a device. I recorded directly through my camera, and you hear this hissing sound. It's actually just called noise. Yeah. So it's in the background. And when cutting up the dialogue and other bits of audio, it would then provide this gap that's very noticeable. It's like we all have ambience in life, so you don't notice the sound is gone until it's gone. So I cut it up and you hear, and that became more noticeable to me because it kept saying like, oh, there was something there. And even at that moment, what I did was I actually got the noise, I extended it, and made a noise track for the whole project. And I still see people who do this with the YouTube videos and other projects they do, and like even big names. And it's not like it destroys the project for me. It is a pet peeve because I think they think that's better to just completely like cut it out. There's no noise, don't have the noise. I'm like, in my opinion, keep it. Because no one knows that there's noise there until it's gone. So yeah, it's always been like I need to keep it consistent, and also balancing stuff. Like there's music in But Wait There's More. There's sound effects in But Wait There's More. Like I played around with it. I knew what I was doing with that.
Yeah. So the thing with that is, so what they're doing is they're effectively using gating. It could be done either manually, which is.
What's gating?
Yeah,
gating?
describe what that is.
So gating is
that when there's a neighborhood I'm not allowed in?
Fucking Suburbans.
No. Gating is when you set audio in such a way that when it's at a certain volume or above that volume, you allow the audio to play. However, once it drops below a certain threshold, the audio goes silent. It's an effect that you add. It's been used for decades. So what you're describing is gating. It's like, okay, nobody's talking, but you still have that noise in the background. The noise is a lower volume than the noise and the voice combined. So what you just do is set it to, okay, the volume of the noise is, say it's at negative 40 decibels or something like that. And so you do is you set your gate just right above that so that whenever that it's just that noise, it cuts out. Now, if you're, say, doing music or you have a bunch of different sound sources going on at once, you can get away with gating. If you're listening to you listen to a rock song with guitar in it, those guitars are going to have noise. It's inescapable that they're going to have noise. So gating is used very commonly, say, on a distorted electric guitar track. But you don't notice it because you also got the drums, you got the bass, you got the vocals going on, right? The problem with that is when you have only one track, you're like, okay, you hear. Now there are situations where you can use a gate and it works convincingly well. Most of the time it doesn't. And the problem is okay, you hear just the voice, then you have noise, and you'll hear, person is, I'm talking and blah, 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 and then you hear shh right at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes if the person really didn't pay attention to how they set the gate, you'll actually hear shh, 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 shh. You'll hear it, and then they'll start talking again. And that's when it's like, you didn't even, like, okay, you gated in a situation where you shouldn't have really gated, and then you didn't even set the gate right. And now you sound like, I mean, it is hard because it's really annoying, but there are other ways to go around it.
Yeah. For me, I feel like the thing about it is that my theory is that for them, this is actually better to like have that sound just go away from the audio when it's not there. I mean, like those moments of quiet if there's no noise because it made the vocals sound better. But in my opinion, it's like it kind of just comes off as like you're faking it. It's like it's like that person knows the software, but they don't really know sound. It's like if someone's like, hey, you know what makes a good film? Just have a good camera. It's the same mentality. It's like, what's going to make this like stand out and make it seem like this is a great project? Is just using this effect without really knowing why you're using it. It's not just to use it just to use it. It's like, well, does it make it sound better? And bringing it back to it is like, hey, if a hissing sound's in the background the whole time, no one's going to notice it.
Well, I know. Oh, do you want?
Yeah, I was going to say, I would say that's true, but there's a significant caveat in that, which is if you're using cheaper equipment, which a lot of us are, because a lot of us just don't have money.
We're surrounded by a mic stand held up by a plastic bag with shoes, and my mic stand is a paper towel roll.
Well, I mean, but that's
I just love you. Like, we're using cheap equipment. I was like, should we reveal this curtain?
So, but the thing is if you're using a cheap mic and a cheap recording interface, you're gonna have a lot of noise. No matter what equipment you use, there's going to be noise to some extent. Higher quality equipment produces less noise. It has a lower, what we would call a noise floor. Cheaper equipment, one of the things that makes it cheaper is that it has a higher noise floor. So it is true that you can just leave the hiss in the background, but there are cases, and I've come across these, where you need to get rid of the noise. You need to do something else. If you're not going to gate, then you can use denoising, which it's a little bit touchier, but it overall it works better. It sounds more natural. So there are cases though where the hiss is so bad that it is ruining your audio. You would even be better off doing that annoying gate thing.
I have a question regarding to that, and then I have
Okay.
a question regarding to like kind of your general career in like sound and all that.
Okay.
But is there, when you have a cheap microphone and a cheap software that you were talking about, and you said that there's no going around that noise, is there do people like mask it so much to the point where it's noticeable that there is a mask? It's kind of like for art, for example. For art, you can tell when you see polished, I guess you could say polished shit, in which basically it's a really crappy drawing, but has so much effects over it that they try to make it look good. Do you get what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, no.
You sound like me using Instagram filters. Maybe this picture, maybe if I add more contrast.
yeah.
Okay.
Hefe, let's put that on there.
So I'll address that question, and you can ask me the next question.
Yeah, go.
And yeah, absolutely. Sound, you can totally try to polish shit, and it's gonna be really nice looking shit.
Yeah.
So yeah. And you actually, when you asked me that question, you mentioned cheap software. There's actually a very common misconception that it's more expensive software makes better recordings. Completely false, people. If you got a microphone and you got Audacity, a free program, that's going to record just as good as your $600, $700.
Yeah, you
digital
showed
audio
me in like
workstation.
10 minutes how to clean up sound, and it would
Yeah.
already sounded like so much better.
Yeah. So with that, but yeah, there's so many ways you can try to mask it. In fact, if you use denoising too heavily, you will start, like on a voice, it's really obvious. You'll start hearing almost a watering effect, like you're watching YouTube in 2005. And those are artifacts created by the denoising. There are programs which I cannot afford right now, but that are
We
really
have a crying session.
okay.
It's like a baby.
But no, there are programs which are really, really good at doing it. They produce less artifacts, and thus, just with ease, you can come up with a cleaner recording that is not just polished shit, but it's like you've actually turned some of that shit into gold using some audio alchemy.
Yeah. No, and that's I noticed that is something that you kind of uphold in like all your recording sessions with Nick, even like with I know the mixing, that's like really what you try to look for mainly, and that's pretty awesome.
Okay, and then your second question.
My second question, yeah. So you listen to the podcast, and you know generally our themes about, not only are we like talking about our specifics about film, about art and all that, but just kind of like how we go about our career, how we go about learning stuff and all that. I'm just kind of curious, since it sounds like in the beginning from your introduction, you kind of learn on the way. It's not something that it's not a formal thing that it was necessarily taught to you. It's something you're kind of like, again, like how me and Nick, we kind of just picked it up.
I'm glad I was actually going to ask that too.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if this adds on to, because I'm really curious, and I think it ties along with this. You said self-taught, and I do think when people hear the word self-taught, it's just like, I feel like there's no real image to that, but it's just understood like, oh, this person just kept doing it. But it's not just that. So, I mean, where do you even start when like, I mean, well, I could speak for like how I started. Azero could speak for how he started, but I feel like there's so many different routes of what it means to be a self-starter. What was your resources? So yeah, just go into that. You can start from what you said. You were 14 when you started.
Just working with sound, or
Just getting
You know
curious
what?
about.
Yeah,
period.
go all the way. Let's
all
go
the way
like,
back would take me to at 11 years old.
Okay, let's start right there.
So,
So self-taught, 11 years old. What happened?
So as you both know, like my dad's a drummer. He's been a drummer for much longer than I've been alive. But he didn't have a drum set for a long time, and he got one. And we hadn't lived with him. My brothers and I, we hadn't lived with him yet. He got a drum set, and I just sat and I started messing around. My dad showed me a couple little things, but he never gave me like a formal lesson. And so what happened was, it's like, oh, do this thing. So I did this thing. He's like, okay, do this thing. He showed me like 3 different things to play. And from there, it was like I could go and just ask him a question here and there. So it's like, yeah, I got a little bit of a boost there. So that's how I started with drums. As soon as I moved away from drums, completely on my own. So the idea of being a total autodidact, of being completely self-taught in something, it's the idea isn't, oh, well, my dad showed me this or so-and-so, or, I took some lessons here or whatever. Sometimes you need that to kind of springboard, or it's a helpful way to kind of just springboard yourself onto that particular endeavor. But I think the best example would be using audio software, because not only did my dad have no idea how to use audio software, he from a different time, nobody I knew did anything like that at the time. And I didn't have internet at home, by the way. So this would have been 2008.
So at this time,
2007.
At this time, I guess it's kind of similar to like my situation, which, yes, I had friends who drew and all that, but no one wanted to go into it as deeply as I did, like make a career out of it.
So you almost found yourself like there was no perfect role model to follow. You had to be it.
No. The closest thing I had to a role model was when I was 14 years old, I was totally enamored with Nine Inch Nails, and I was amazed that Trent Reznor who's basically is Nine Inch Nails, how talented he was musically and on the production line. How could one person, with maybe some help on certain tracks, but how one person could spearhead quite an amazing, to this day I would say, an amazing discography of music.
Well, maybe not role model. Maybe it was like mentor. Like, for you to, like you saying going for the software, like no one else was doing it.
No one else.
So it was just like, I have to be the guy.
Yeah.
This is what I did. I went and I bought a cheap program called Cakewalk Music Creator 3, or was it 4? Anyway,
yeah, I think I played a game that started Kitty Cat that had the same name.
But it was actually a true digital audio workstation that was extremely stripped down. It wasn't like it wasn't just like, it's some.
It had the bare
game or anything.
essentials, right?
Very bare essentials.
Yeah.
And I literally picked that up, read the manual, and taught myself how to use it like that.
Right.
And then it was a few years of making music that I would never, ever show somebody who wasn't a friend.
Yeah.
But just send me the link in a personal email. I promise I would just keep it to myself.
Well, what's really interesting about that is I feel like when that happens, I'm pretty sure you guys can relate, when you're kind of thrown into something that no one is kind of guiding you through, that kind of harbors, or like that kind of gives you that good habit of just discovering and learning for yourself, and
you mean
really
just doing it.
really just doing it. Because not too long ago I picked up Illustrator, but I also picked up Photoshop by myself, but from there I was able to already have that genuine curiosity and like really be comfortable with playing around with a lot of tools, like making mistakes, like learning from him, all that stuff. I'm pretty sure that's probably what you got from playing with this software, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, that was the way that I picked up onto audio technology. Was that was the way that I introduced myself to it. And you had to start somewhere. I will say that pretty much everything, it's been on my own. In fact, a lot of people, what they do today, if they're wanting to get into doing this sort of stuff, is they have a wealth of YouTube videos that you can do it it's easier than ever today to teach yourself something like this. And I think this would apply, for example, to Illustrator or Photoshop, right? There's so many tutorials out there. I didn't have any of that because when I did have internet at first, it was dial-up. And
is it the Juno like when dial-up starts like?
Yes, it was exactly that. You had to have a home phone and you couldn't use the home phone. Yeah. And I had dial-up in 2008. It's because of where I lived. I lived out in the country. So yeah, I didn't have anything, so I just completely jumped into it. When I did finally get a broadband connection, I mostly used that to actually learn basic music theory. So I taught myself. I remember the first scale I learned, I looked it up on Wikipedia. That's how I learned it.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, these are the notes that I use. And then I'm like, okay. And I just started fucking around on the bass that I had, and then on a keyboard, and I just taught myself like that.
But you already knew that they when you were playing them, they were in tune and all that, because you know how like in YouTube videos, whenever they show you also the sound and what it's supposed to sound like. Because you already had an idea of how it's supposed to sound.
So one little thing is, for a few years, before they completely hollowed out the arts in public school curricula, one of the things
I need quite the pause for us all feel that. Before they got rid of it, I'm going to extend that pause. All right, let that sit and call somebody. Call a politician.
So, but I had music for a few years, and I learned the basic notes from playing recorder in elementary school. So I actually figured out which notes were on a keyboard because the keyboard labeled the notes. And then, so from there, I just learned basic music theory from, I remember playing recorder in like second grade, third grade. And now I'm like 14.
That almost sounds comical.
I'm like 14.
Like the thing we all forgot, recorder.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait, I do have something stored in my mind. The recorder.
Yeah.
From second grade.
And you know what?
It's like it actually was teaching us something.
Yeah, no, it was teaching you rudimentary music. And so I just extrapolated what I learned onto a keyboard, and then eventually on the bass figured out, what notes were what. And yeah, I mean, I always would get pointers from musicians. I was around musicians to an extent. I get pointers here and there, but it was mostly just going in blind and trying to build a lamp, I guess.
Yeah. A lamp?
Yeah.
I get this metaphor now.
I forgot to mention the dark cave that I'm in.
Yeah, you said blind. If you're blind, turn
I really
on.
fucked it
you're
up.
Still blind.
I really fucked that one up. I'm not gonna lie.
Nick will edit it in post. So it's just like a whole like monotone story.
I'll adjust it. It's like going in blind, and then I need to make a new set of eyes to go through this surgery.
No, but it was going in, not having any idea, and then just here and there pick up little things, and yeah.
And a lot of it sounds like you keep mentioning it, but it's like you made stuff that I don't know if you liked it back then, but you just powered through. Like if it wasn't good, if it wasn't the thing, you were just like, I need to try this out.
Yeah, I went. In fact, back in 2009, that'd be 15 to 16. I made 70 different songs.
Wow. In the span of what time?
Over the span of, I would say 5 or 6 months.
Man, you were cranking out like
you're like bass god.
But here's the thing, and much like bass god, they were terribly mixed. No, I'm not hating.
Take that, bass god.
I'm not hating on bass god, but you can tell that mixing is not his priority, and it wasn't mine. I'm not bashing on anybody here.
Yeah, because like mixing is a whole different field.
Yeah,
you had to know first how to make the songs before you went to the technical side of balancing them out.
Yeah, and mixing can make or break a track very easily, and so a lot of it was just, well, I have all these tools here that came with this program, but I don't really know how to use them. I didn't really start learning how to use them until was 17, and then that's so really mixing, like in doing it in depth. I didn't actually start until I was 17, and I really, to be completely honest, didn't really actually start focusing on it until I was about, not until a few years later. I was about 20, 21. That's when I started like really honing in on, okay, this is what I'm doing. So, and it's put me where I am now. Now it's interesting because it's like, oh, I can, like, I don't know how to do this thing. Oh, I could just look up this. I did take, one thing that did help is I took one course in a community college. And it was Introduction to Music Production. Remember that class, Professor?
Because it rhymed.
Yep, that's the only reason.
Introduction to music production. They're already making songs in this class.
But
okay, we took it because...
But I took it because it was kind of like, there's some basic stuff I know I don't know. I know what I don't know, right? So let's try to figure out what I don't know. The class, more than half the stuff I already knew. But then there were small technical things I didn't know. There were things that I hadn't even considered. And I would talk to the instructor a lot after the class and ask him questions, and had him look at my work a couple of times to kind of critique. So that class ended up helping a lot, and just with sort of covering my bases. And I think from there, it really showed me how important it is to mix, to involve yourself with that. The more technical aspects of producing, a piece of music.
That kind of sounds similar. That sounds similar to like what you went through in community college, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah. Like right when he's telling the story, it's like, wow,
taking the class, and you felt like half the things were things you already knew, but you did get new information, and it made it worth taking the class. Mm-hmm. Even my favorite was always like they would teach something, and you'd be like, oh my god, that's so much easier than that. Like, it's like you knew to worry about something, but you didn't know there was an easier way to go about it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's exactly how it was. Which is also great, too, because if you go in already knowing some things and you take a class and they are discussing things you already know, it is still nice to get, like, that reassurance with it. Like, okay, I am doing this right. Is there any other technique to go around it? And also just kind of like testing you, like, do you really know your stuff? Can you be in this classroom discussion?
So now that we kind of gone over your background, how you kind of got into everything, into the sound, you were also mentioning that film is a completely different avenue, right? So you guys started working together early on. So I mean, now that you're actually collaborating with someone, how does that feel now? Like,
and also to mention, this is something brand new for Ian. Like, him working on Hide with me is the first project he has done, so it's still fresh. You're trying this out.
So one of the things, so I'm trying to think how best to start this.
Once upon a time,
and I went to Tijuana.
I like this story.
I actually did. It was awesome. But
is he bragging about it?
No, it was just Tijuana.
Flex, but okay.
Nice flex over there. Yeah. You have a hole in your shirt. Fuck you. No, I'm just kidding.
I don't have a hole in my shirt.
What shirt had the hole? Oh, I have a hole in my shirt. Look, you guys, this would be the one visual we put in the podcast. Me being wrong. I was like, wait, what black shirt had a hole in it? Oh shit, it was mine.
But So your question is more so like, oh, how do I feel, or
well, yeah, because
like the change, I believe it was. Like, what was the difference between you study so much mixing music, now you're mixing for a film, and you're finding out it's completely different.
Well, to add on to that too, collaborating with someone, because for a long time you were kind of doing your own thing, but when you're actually with someone, like you're helping them out, you're getting the critique back from Nick and all that.
You also have them depending on you.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I'll actually address the collaboration part first. As far as collaborating, like I've collaborated with a few people.
It was actually, he also collaborated with me before this because we worked on music together.
So I want to point out that in this case with Nick is it's absolutely delightful to work with Nick on anything. From the first time I worked with them, it's always been it's been enjoyable, and it's like, oh, we're having fun and we're doing work.
You guys are always on the same page from what I know.
Yeah, when we work together, there's this thing in which we are both patient with each other, and we do try to have an understanding.
Yeah.
And be, I guess, considerate. Because if I ask him to do something, I don't just say, do it. I ask him if it's possible and what would have to be done to do this.
Yeah.
What can I do? And I also think a good thing that helped us out with that is when we work together, we try to understand each other's processes and the softwares. That if I'm sitting here and I'm watching Ian adjust my vocals, if he's able like to talk at the moment, I ask him like, well, what are you doing right now? Like, what is the effect? And if I describe something incorrectly, but he knows what I'm talking about, I ask him like, well, what would be a better way to translate this? And then we have like perfect communication now. I mean, we can still be better at it, but because I'm not too intelligent in sound, and vice versa in my field, like he still would be considered a rookie in it. But we both we have a better understanding of how to communicate with each other.
Yeah, at least you have a better understanding of sound than me, because like when me and Ian are kind of working together right now too. And I always feel so bad when I don't know how to describe something. It's like this beat. Can you do that? Can you do that? Like I feel like such an just like the stereotypical like person who you hate working with.
Trust me. No, you are not the stereotypical person. So with with Nick, yeah, it's just like he described it very accurately, which should actually be a testament to, like, my agreement should be a testament to how well we actually do work together. If he has an understanding of our collaboration process than I do, I will say that I'm by nature I'm a little bit, maybe not by nature, maybe by nurture, I'm a little bit short-tempered, so sometimes I get a little bit exasperated when it's like detail changes. I'm like, but that's a personality thing.
Yesterday he was telling me, Nick, this is literally a millisecond. It doesn't make a difference when we place this sound. I kept going, maybe a little bit sooner. No, a little sooner. He's like, no.
but no, regardless, so yeah, the collaboration process with Nick, it's very smooth. He is goal oriented. He wants to finish the project. It's not. I've had the experience with other people where it's like you do it halfway through and then they never follow through, and it's like, well, it's like I want to finish this, but there are things you need to do. Even if I'm doing all the music and everything, there are still things that other people need to do. I've had like for an example. Good example is I was 18 years old and I recorded this band once, and they were great band. But I said, hey, okay, I have like the tracks done, and but we need to come back. We need to go back. We need to re-record. Like, there's some issues with the performance, and then they never followed up. And I've had some experiences like that. But with Nick, it's like, oh, he's going to follow up, and he's going to make sure that I'm actually doing what the fuck I'm supposed to be doing. And that's great. So now to kind of move over to Azero was saying, just because somebody lacks the sort of the technical knowledge involved with sound, like if they had that technical knowledge of sound, chances are they wouldn't be asking me to do sound for them, right? So of course, it's sort of meaning different than if I asked Nick something about film. Say I wanted him to record a music video for me or something, or if I asked Azero to draw a piece for me, I'm gonna have to give samples. I'm gonna have to give instances of things which they're tokens of like what I'm looking for, of just more basic type which I'm looking for. But as far as like with Azero, it's like, oh, like he had sent me a snippet of this beat. And we actually talked about this a couple hours ago. He was showing me the snippet, and he's like, these are sort of the elements that I'm looking for. Like, I want the drums to be sort of like this and the bass to be like this. But that's pretty much it. And then it's like you kind of have some free reign after that, which is extremely desirable. I'll tell you, you want me to basically sit there and not get anything done for you because I don't know what the fuck to do? Ask me, can you make me a beat? cool, I'll do that. Okay, what do you want? What are you looking for? Whatever you want.
Oh yeah, no.
You know,
No,
'cause
I don't stoop that low.
they don't mean it. Like,
Yeah.
they'll be like, just do whatever you want. And then you give it to them. They're like, not like that.
Yeah. Oh wow.
And so, yeah. So, to the audience here, if you're ever soliciting somebody's services for any sort of artistic product, be it sound, film, art, anything, do not ever ask an artist to make you something and then tell them whatever you want. If you like the work that they're already doing and you want something along that neighborhood, reference their work and say, I liked what you did here or there.
Mm-hmm.
If you are, and I'll stick to myself since I know this. And if somebody's like, hey, I want like a old school, like boom bap beat. I'm like, okay, that's cool. What type, are we looking for? Are we thinking like early 90s, like hardcore rap? Are we thinking like, late 80s, conscious rap? Like, what do you want me to do? You want me to do something like KRS-One? Do you want me to got to give me an example here of something?
I think,
yeah. So any sort of reference is absolutely necessary if you want a creative to produce something for you, be it for free or for pay. If you're getting it for free, you should facilitate the work that they're doing to the best of your ability. And the easiest way you can do that is to provide an example, some sort of instantiation of what you're looking for.
mm-hmm. I think it's like also could be helpful that, say if you don't really know the terminology or you don't know exactly where you want them to start. I'll put the example of you doing the score for Hyde. What I would do, and maybe this goes different for everybody, for other producers, but I try to describe to you like the character I want. Like, what is the moment happening? What do I want people to feel? Because, music's not just music. Music's going to make you feel something. It's like how punk makes you really energetic, and something like Kenny G makes you want to relax. And I remember when I wanted the score to change, what I was mentioning.
Hang on, can I ask a question?
What?
How have you never moshed to Kenny G?
Well, I can't be a one-man mosh crew. Come on, let's do it.
And there's the invitation, finally.
Yeah, I'm calling you out. But I remember I was describing to you, like, I don't know what I want, but I said, like, I want something, to skim over the conversation, but it ended with, yes, I want something chaotic. I want this to be the moment where chaos happens, because the whole film was like suspenseful, that makes you go, is it gonna happen? Is it not? And then it goes to, well, it's fucking gonna happen. Like, there's like, in your brain it's gonna happen, but you have a sliver of hope. And describing it that way, you were like, so if you want something chaotic and also almost like uncomfortable for the audience, like, this could be, I could simulate that sound by applying this. And it did get us somewhere. Like, it wasn't like that day we got the final product of it, but it was like, when listening was like, wait, yeah, something like this. Like, let's keep working with that.
Yeah.
Because it's like, if you say, what you were saying about like boom rap, it's like, well, yeah, but what do you want the audience to feel at that moment? Like, are they relaxing to something? Are they trying to get into it? Like, is it just
what
a
are
simple...
you wanting to talk about?
Yeah, because I know, like, wouldn't boom rap be like Scenario by Tribe Called Quest?
It's definitely it's definitely
that
along
thing,
those lines.
when I think of like, is it boom rap or boom bap?
Boom bap.
So when I think of like boom bap, is like that one is just like, you're gonna freestyle over it. But Scenario is like, you're fucking jumping around. Like, that's an energetic beat.
Well,
Both the same genre, but they have different feelings.
And exactly. And it's being able to specify sort of what you desire out of the particular product that you're soliciting, like, for, and just because, you don't have the technical knowledge for something doesn't mean you can't describe it with sufficient accuracy for the creator to produce something. And I think the way that we work together, me and you, Nick, exemplifies that. And because, like, for example, Azero's he's had to deal with this thing as well with other people. That it's at this point, it's being able to establish a line of communication which doesn't employ that jargon that you're using, that technical language in your specific field. There's going to be no point in if I'm like, say I'm talking to Azero and I'm like, hey, for the beat, like, what kind of dynamic range are you looking for? And then it's like, and I don't know if you know what dynamic range is.
I know a little bit of it, but I wouldn't know enough to hold a conversation about it.
Yeah, and then
You can say the words, and then the conversation's over.
yeah, and so it would be like, that's not helpful at all. So I would have to kind of employ the concept of dynamic range and describe it in plain words. It'd be no different than if some person they get a bachelor's in biology, let's say, and then you ask them a question about biology, and they just start throwing all these terms out there, and it's like, well, I didn't spend 4 years learning biology terms.
I think real quick, I think a good point about especially being a freelancer as well, that I feel like is not talked about a lot. That's also another skill set, being able to communicate your skill to a client, to be able to put it in terms that they will feel comfortable talking back with and collaborating with you.
It's being patient and respectful.
Exactly.
Almost like, don't act like you're a teacher for like 5 classes, but you could still like, they're going to come to you, and if some people might be a bit demanding and mean about it, but some people might be actually kind of scared. Like, they're a little nervous to like approach you because they're like, I don't know. It's like, well, be patient with them. Like, well, okay, let me help you out. So this is what I do. And I would say, like, if you really don't know, I think this would be good. Is this what you would like? And I could, you maybe don't have to give them the whole lecture, but you give them like, I can apply something that does, I can apply this, and it will do this to the piece.
Yeah, I think you do that really well, Ian. Because even for my stuff, I'm very super. I only know the basics about music, but not even to the point where I can like talk to you with like your stuff and all that. But you make sure that every step of the way, like we're working on a project together, that even that, like you were able to make something that I never even thought would be possible, and like. And it turned out amazing, better than what I expected.
Yeah, and so one of the key things is when you've established that line of communication with somebody, it's knowing also when you do need to explain something and when you can just say, no, just take my word for it. And Nick knows this very well. Earlier we were talking about ways that he could loop a particular piece of the score for to use, and I said, well, if you go and try to just simply copy and paste it and loop it like that, it's not going to work. And I'm like, here are 2 ways you can do it. Here's just one somewhat technical way. Or you can just, do this other way that you can do in your software. But I at no point in explaining that did I need to tell him, why it's the case he needs to do it this particular way. The specific, like, audio, like the facts about audio that are in play. But then there are other times where it's like, for example, you'd ask me on, for Hyde, can we do this thing with this particular track? And I'll be like, yeah, do it. And it's like, yeah, it's pretty simple. I just did this and this, and that's the end of it.
Yeah.
I didn't need to explain how I use an EQ or distortion or a comb filter or whatever to get this particular effect. Because it's like, well, why the hell are we having this conversation?
Yeah, you tell me enough, but then like, if you send me a draft and there's something I like more about it, you tell me enough where I know what to encourage you. Like, keep adding, play with that effect more, add more of this, which again helps with that communication. And then as we work more and more together, I can now say like, the equalizer, I play with that and I want that to hit the higher frequencies as opposed to the lower frequencies.
Yeah, and so with that. That's what it is. It's just being able to keep your language and your use of concepts relevant to the tasks at hand. Now, if somebody, say, was like more curious and want to get more in depth, we could have that conversation. But while we're working on some sort of piece, no, don't. There's no point. We're burning time.
So we're getting actually pretty close to the end of this, but there was
I kept looking at the phone. I could see.
Well, I didn't know. I know Azero actually asked 2 questions. We started with collaboration first. So I think the final question.
That's right.
Yeah, final question for this episode would be that talk of like, so there was this thing you had much experience with, and it was sound, but mainly for music.
Yes.
And then you find out like you're doing sound for film. It's like, well, both are sound, but you're finding that it's a different approach,
Yeah.
coming with its own challenges that your music experience is applying to this, but it's still not enough. So like, tell me about like growing in that field and anything else you want to add in pertaining to it.
So, I guess the big thing to point out is all you have to do, anybody that can hear and that watch this film and that listens to music, listen to a film, listen to a song, especially one produced in, say, the last 20 years. Watch a film produced in the last 20 years, listen to a song produced in the last 20 years. If you listen to them and you just pay attention to the sound, all you have to do is listen to a snippet, think about how much different they sound from each other, and that'll actually give you an idea of how different the sensibilities are. So the similarities so let's do a compare and contrast. So when you're talking about film and you're talking about music, the similarities are you're going to use the same tools. Not only is it similar, but it's precisely the same tool set. And whatever I use for music, I can also use for film. But of course, the similarity kind of begins there. And besides the tools, you also have just the same basic principles of sound applying. Because you're working with sound, you're not working with a different media, right? Those are really the only similarities. The differences are, okay, what sensibilities apply? Like, I know how to use this tool for music, but now I have to use this tool for film in a much different way than I've used it. For example, if I want to simulate distance, like distance, and you have something that was recorded right next to a mic, and it's like, okay, now I got to use an EQ and a reverb, and I got to use it in a way that I would never use it in a song, just about.
Yeah.
Except for maybe for a special effect of some sorts. So the cool thing about it is I have this skill set to where I can listen to sounds, non-musical sounds, and think, okay, I want it to sound more like this. And I have enough experience just working with music, with sound and music, to say, well, this is a way that you can do it. You can do it this other way. Here are options that I have, tools that are available.
Mm-hmm.
But then that's all in theory. And then when you move on to praxis, it's different. It's like, oh, okay, that didn't work like I thought it did, or this was perfect. I got lucky with this one. But the challenges have just been really breaking the habits that I've had for years, insofar as, okay, this is how it's supposed to sound. This is what you're supposed to aim towards. Because all those goals are different. Even down to how loud a final track for a film should be compared to music. Since we're not at this point yet, that's like the one major hurdle I still have to go across is, how do I get this mastered properly? How do I get this ready to go up? And I'm not worried about it because I have my background, but it's like, yeah, the sensibility is much different, and what I thought would sound good for a song would be absolutely atrocious to play for a film, and vice versa. So it's just, the challenge is really just, again, is breaking those habitual lines of thinking, and coming up with novel ways. It's been fun, though. So if I'm going to have to add something, it's been absolutely enjoyable to practice my skill set and expand on it. And it's work, and sometimes it's stressful. I remember one day distinctly sitting at my computer for about 3 hours straight, and I only completed maybe 2 tasks because I'm trying to get it this way, but I can't. I can't get it this way. This is driving me insane. And then I took my break and came back. I'm like, oh wait. You get mind lock.
Yeah. Real quick, that's what also we talk about in the podcast, like learn to take breaks, as an artist, like really making sure that you have your personal time. Well, one more quick question. This will be real quick.
But I had one more note about this.
Okay, what? No,
I want to be the main host. Well, I just want to know that, and I don't know I didn't know if you were going to change subjects.
I was gonna,
but I think another thing that we talked about when it came to doing your music and then working on scoring a film is that you have more control in a song because the only reference people have is the song itself.
Yeah.
But for film, you're going off of a visual reference that the sound can't just sound good. It has to make sense for what we're looking at. That when we just listen to a track, like there's plenty of footsteps in the film. I mean, that's kind of obvious for all films actually, but okay, footsteps are something that's very prominent because it's like someone lurking in the house. And the footsteps can sound fine just listening to it, but there is going to be a different way where we're doing the footsteps and approaching them depending on if the antagonist is in the room with our main character, and if they're in the distance. And it's making sure that, well, when we look at it, is it making sense? Like, does that sound like this is in the distance, or does that just sound quieter? Like, it sounds good, but when you look at it, it's like that's not making sense.
Yeah. So I guess to wrap it up, this subject I want to talk about. So, we're talking about now, what you're doing now, what you did in the past. Do you have anything coming up right now that you want to mention?
Oh, damn. I was scared of this.
Yeah,
one.
I know.
Yeah.
There's something.
There's so many things to consider. I'm trying to start a new cult.
Dude, I'm pretty down to start a cult, though.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
It starts with a mosh pit, so if you just, if you keep your word.
It's a
I'm not talking about.
cycle.
We're gonna be like a cool cult, though.
A cool cult.
No suicide.
I think every cult thinks they're cool, though.
But we're gonna have better robes, so.
No. There's gonna be no God figures, no suicides. No, we're not gonna take money from you and pull you. We're gonna be like an old school cult. Which in the ancient times, cults were actually much different than they are now.
Just orgies of Eden.
No. Cults were just
I don't want to be a part of it anymore.
effectively small religious groups that weren't mainstream. That's actually what it originally meant.
This is how we're ending the podcast.
All right.
What is your
what do
future
you wanna
plan?
do?
Come on, tell us what's next.
Sorry. See what happens.
Tell us what you got planned, what you're already in the process of, like what do you want to get finished.
So, right now we're finishing up Hyde. So that's my main project. After that, I have a plan. I'm not sure the time frame yet. I plan to release my own EP here, hopefully by the end of the year. And then, of course, we have the project that we're discussing, too.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. Well, now you mentioned we're on a project with music, but, we should just keep it at that.
That's... So,
but if you do want a little peek of, like, what the type of music, like, what the music would be like, the promo ad I made for my rap duo Fuck had a song by Ian as in the background of it. So yeah, that's what Ian makes, and that's the tone of our music project.
Yeah. So so those are kind of my plans. It's right now my schedule has been pretty filled because of my personal life, certain things going on there, but yeah, so that's what I hope. I do have a couple of songs drafted for the EP I want to release, and I'm just looking forward to, once we wrap this up, is to move forward and let's get some music out there.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Ian, it was a absolute delight to have you on the show. Finally, too, because
I know. No planning either. I didn't even bring the mic I wanted to bring.
No, you have to be at our level, okay?
Yeah.
Welcome to how we first recorded. I say as I have my
better.
own mic from the distance.
Yeah. Thank you. We really appreciate you coming on.
So this would be the time where now we sign off. Let's say our goodbyes. Thank you so much for listening, and we do hope to have more guests in the future. So
we definitely are going.
The show's evolving.
Yeah.
Evolving, my bad. The show's evolving, but it's also involving of other people. All right.
Yes.
So this is Nick Vick saying goodbye for now.
And Azero Alcala. Goodbye.
This is Ian. Thank you for having me.
Ian has a last name.
Ian Francis-Salles.
Thank you. Yeah. What, you think you're some cool DJ? I'm Ian. Just Ian. You're not Drake. He's not a DJ. That was his poor,
and the music cues.
Yes.
There's so many things wrong with that sentence.
Yes.